Week 1 is back underway, Drew. How good was it for both of us today? Honestly, Titans fan, Chiefs fan, I'm sure Ravens fans out there are somewhat satisfied with the way today went. If you're on the wrong end of it, we hate it for you. And I do want to talk about that. Obviously, you're here at Sports Around the Bar. You're here to talk sports with us. We are talking all football today, both with our Week 1 reaction, and we're going to talk about everything that happened this week, and we're also going to talk about the primetime games and what to expect. We're glad you're joining us in between now and Sunday Night Football. We're going to kind of speed things up a little bit faster than our normal pace to try to get all this out and get everybody watching Monday Night Football when it comes on. So, Drew, before we go into it, man, favorite moment of the week so far?
It's my Chiefs beating the Jags.
Do I need to ask?
Do you really need to ask me that? It's definitely a highlight for me. But to be honest, Lamar Jackson's, coming out game pretty much. Yeah, it's against Miami Dolphins, but impressive. Very impressive.
I was going to wait till we talked about Miami to talk about this, but in his post-game conference, he's like, not bad for a running back throwing the 5 touchdowns. It's like, all right, man, I'm glad. I'm going to let you have your moment, but it was the Dolphins, okay? This is the team that everyone's like, they're giving up before we even start. Luna, good to see you. Eddie saying, how about them Chiefs? Also, Ivy's all in on Cardinals and Lions. Crazy game. A lot of crazy games. Nathan, good to see you too, man. I'm sure you're happy about the Colts at least taking the Chargers to overtime. That was good for them. They look much better than I expect them to. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, we start with our 1 o'clock games, and it starts with the Titans and Browns, Drew. Oh, there's a lot of talk going into this. And let me tell you, you're a brave man for picking the Browns to win this, despite them being the favorites, because you knew if they won, you would just be like, it's what everyone was expecting. But now that they've lost, I get to rub it in a little bit. So let me say this. If you're a Browns fan, I'm not going to sit there and tell you the Browns played a terrible game. Yes, the penalties got out of control. Yes, they were very poorly coached, I think, by first-time head coach Freddie Kitchens. But if they could have got their discipline under control, this game did not get out of hand until Baker Mayfield kind of went on tilt after that first interception. Through the third quarter, or almost through the third quarter, this team was 100% in those games. The offense was looking really, really good. They were playing a good defense, but they were running some creative stuff. They were moving the ball, and then things would kind of just, you'd have the penalty that set you back, or you'd have a bad incompletion. This team, if they can clean it up, is still going to be dangerous.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I mean, one thing I want everyone to realize is this is week 1. I mean, if we go back to last year, the Buccaneers beat the Saints. And we all realize what happened there. Bucs became one of the worst teams in the league, and the Saints became one of the best. Same thing with the Bears and the Packers. Happened again this week. Just pump the brakes, Titans fans and Browns fans.
I think Titans players need to pump the brakes. When you have Delaney Walker coming out there saying, they are who they thought they were. Settle down. This is usually where we get way out of control, kind of like Dallas last year, where you have that staple point win, and they're all fired up because they beat one of the popular teams, and then we don't try hard the next week or two, and we wind up getting mopped. So we've got the Colts next week.
Nate.
I think the Titans need to settle down and stay focused here.
I'm with Nate. You're going to be paying Mariota.
Oh, I hope we haven't got there yet. I hope this one game didn't, tip the bucket, because even Mariota, I don't think he played tremendously well. He had a couple nice passes. He found A.J. Brown deep. This is going to be a running theme. Rookie receivers this week lit it up. The scoreboard was on fire with some of these rookies coming out here. Great performances out of a bunch of young guys that, remember, everybody was kind of dismissing come draft time, saying this is a defensive draft. This is the draft where all the defensive players are. The offensive rookies lit it up today.
Yeah, Justin. Trust me, as soon as he came around, he was already talking the smack about how great the Titans are, talking about the Super Bowl.
You were fired up about the Packers, and I didn't slow that down. You were telling me how great Patrick Mahomes is, even without Tyreek Hill. Still is, yeah, okay. So it's not just me. Everybody's happy when their team loses. I'm trying not to go too hard on the Browns. When it wins. I'm trying not to go too hard on the teams that lost. But Dustin's saying, how about Dak Prescott? I agree, man. Dak looked good. I almost wonder if this was the Cowboys saying, is he worth the $37 million? Let's go find out and have him chuck it all over the lot. Great game from him. We'll talk about him later on, too, when we talk about the afternoon games. Justin, A.J. Brown surprised everybody, I think. I was kind of surprised Marcus could find somebody not named Delaney Walker. And the fact that it was A.J. Brown going deep on one of them and then catching a short pass and breaking tackles and finding way open, it's exciting things to see. It's what the Titans have been missing at wide receiver for a long time. So hopefully we get to see that going forward. As for the rest of this game, I just want to emphasize how undisciplined the Browns were, having the left tackle chucked out. Myles Garrett probably could have too, even though he threw an open-handed punch that hit Delaney Walker in the face. 18 penalties, 164 yards. They wound up shooting themselves in the foot. There's almost no reason I think the Browns should have at least been in this game. but they absolutely fell apart when the penalties got a hold of them. The Titans had a drive in the second quarter that they wound up scoring that 1-yard Derrick Henry touchdown on, where I think there was like 10 penalties. Like, they had one catch for a first down. The rest of it was just penalties. They had 5 first down penalties or something like that. Insane. Absolutely insane. The Browns, it was a lot of like unnecessary roughness, a lot of late hits on the quarterback. It's stuff that you can avoid, that you just don't need to have. This is what Freddie Kitchens is going to have to fight against. He has a lot of personality on this team. There's a lot of swagger, a lot of media attention. You need this rookie head coach to come up big and get everybody on the same track and humble them a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Zecca, good to see you, man. Dustin says Dak will be extended by the end of the week. He said book it. I don't know about that,
After
man.
this, he might be right, honestly.
I don't know if it'll be this week, man. I think it still needs to see another game or two. Mike says was very happy and to see a big change in his Bengals. Yeah, man.
They battled the Seahawks really, really tight.
Really well, because I did not think that game was going to be close at all, and they proved me completely wrong. And not even that, they did it without a run game. Their run game was atrocious. The Seahawks were filling up every hole. You had no running lanes. You guys played a really great game. We'll get to it later.
Just real quick, final thoughts on the Titans game, and we'll move on to the Ravens next. Nate says that he doesn't know Mariota went 14 for 24, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 24 rushing yards. That's a solid game. Normally, I'm with you, but if you watch that game, that could have been 350. Cleveland sold out on stopping the run, especially in the first half. Almost every play, they had 5, 6, 7 guys going forward and left a lot of receivers in single coverage. A lot of missed throws by Mariota still. I think if this was Ryan Tannehill, the game wouldn't have been close. I think at halftime, the Titans probably would have been up like 24-6 or something like that, 21-6. They could have capitalized early, and they didn't do that. They left a lot of points on the field because Marcus missed some throws.
Yeah.
He also moved into some sacks. Wasn't wild about that.
Well,
Myles Garrett was, though.
You should be used to that. Chris is already singing praises. He says, Ravens, Ravens, Ravens.
He's ready to talk Ravens.
Oh, man. It's Dolphins, Dolphins, Dolphins.
This is what you want to see, though. You want to see your team come out and maul the bad teams. You don't want to see them limp like the Chargers do a lot of the times, where even though they should be blowing some teams out, and this isn't a slam on Indianapolis, I'm not counting them there, I'm talking about more last year, you can't let bad teams hang around because that's how you wind up losing close games. I think the Ravens looked great. They got their young receiver, Marquise Brown, involved in it. Just like I said, running theme, man. Marquise Brown, if you look at his stats, 4 receptions, 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He broke a couple big ones, Drew. What a first game. He led all the rookies, but there are just so many impressive performances here from these young guys. This is absolutely fantastic to see. I hope this is like one of those draft classes where, like, man, look at all these studs coming into the league all at once.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm right there with you. Ivy, you said, can the Bengals look good? Can they keep it up? I'm with Mike. At this point in time, they silenced some of their critics. It's just a matter of going back out there and do it again.
I'm thinking about backing up, but like you said, Drew, this is week 1. I've been very critical of the Bengals here lately, but maybe Zach Taylor is the guy to get things back on track for them. At least we'll talk about Cincinnati in a little bit, but at least from week 1's perspective, you can only beat who's in front of you, who's as prepared as they can be. They've had a month to prepare for this game, and they still showed up and performed pretty well despite their roster looking the way it is. I like what I've seen out of Cincinnati so far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mike says, what about these Cardinals right now, man? With our time zone, it kind of gets us right on the edge of this, especially if these games go into overtime. We are watching the game on our phone.
They're sitting on the 23, Drew. I know you're waiting for it.
We're a little bit behind, but we're definitely watching it, trying to pay attention to the game going on. Ken, I know you're upset that CBS dropped the Chiefs game and you wish you could have watched that whole entire blowout, against the Chiefs, against the Jags, but unfortunately, the power went out on the truck at CBS. Maybe we should have turned on the radio and listened to it that way.
Yep. Going back to Ravens-Dolphins, this is an absolute travesty if you're a Dolphins fan. We knew the Ravens were going to be tough, but you don't want a guy like Lamar Jackson throwing 5 touchdowns on you. I get it. This is a team that's lacking talent and everything, but you just gave Xavier Howard big money to try to stop this stuff from happening. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick as well. You spend on the secondary.
Yeah. If
anything, I would have been better if they would have scored 5 rushing touchdowns and just chewed them up on the ground because you haven't spent on the defensive front in the same way that you spent in the back end of this. I think this is a bad sign for the Dolphins going forward. And we were talking about it before. You were saying Josh Rosen needs to get in the field. What do you get to see when the team is this bad? It's like he's going to get beat up, and everyone's going to say, "Oh, I guess he's not a good quarterback." So
I will say the Dolphins owe Rosen absolutely nothing. You do need to find out what he's got. As far as the game itself goes, I think it's the exact same scenario with Dak. Is Lamar wanted to go out there and, as someone put, the silence to the critics, and I think that's exactly what this game was about. And John Harbaugh was like, "We got you, buddy. Here you go."
I also think the Ravens are smelling blood in the water, not just because Cleveland lost, but because of all the talk about them. They're like, okay, we need to prove we're still at the top of this division and we're still the team to beat, because the Steelers, everyone's kind of discounting them as well. I think with all the attention shifting to the Browns, it lets a workman-like team like the Ravens that want to run the ball and play physically, it lets them kind of shine when we're not focused on them. I get it's the Dolphin, but still, 59 points in any kind of game, Drew, absolutely impressive. They set a record for the Week 1, 42 points at halftime. It was the most and a half on Week 1 in NFL history. Show it to me again, though. That's what I want to see. Show it to me again. That's going to be a running theme for Week 1 as well. Let's talk about our next game. Let's talk about the Falcons and the Vikings.
Let's do it.
Kirk Cousins throwing the ball 10 times. Has the pendulum swung too far back towards the conservative? Last year, the whole story with the Vikings is we don't want Kirk Cousins throwing the football. We want to run the ball more and then have him be more of a game manager and throw what he needs to. But 10 passes?
Yeah, it seemed like the play calling kind of got away from him. I get that they were up and there was no reason to throw the ball, but I mean, you have two of the best receivers on your team and you spend all that money on Kirk Cousins. You would think you'd want him to be airing it out. Of course, for all your Dalvin Cook fans out there, and I'm one of them, what a great game for him. He showed out. As far as the other side of the ball goes, the Falcons. Man, I was high on them. I'm probably a little bit higher than you are.
Yeah. I thought they were going to be better than this.
But this looked terrible. Of course, they kind of got picked up a little bit later in the game. Again, I got a question for you. Is this the lack of preseason play before week 1?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams are going through this. Eric's saying Falcons have been a big letdown. I totally agree, but this is what happens when you haven't played essentially in a live game scenario for 4 weeks. We may hate the preseason as fans, but it can be enough to get your team more on pace with each other in the first week. We saw the Bears kind of suffer. I think I want to hope we've seen the Dolphins suffer. The Browns could have used a little more work too, it looks like. Yeah. I think every team could have used more work in the preseason, but now we're going more towards keep my guys rested, keep my guys healthy. We're going to see slower starts from some teams.
Dustin said the Vikings looked really, really good and very well balanced. Cook is out there to prove himself. They're his pick to win the North while everyone else sleeps on him.
They absolutely could be. We've talked about it before, Drew. This team is very much intact from that 2017 run where they got all the way to the NFC Championship. They have the defense. I get it. The only thing they've really changed that's of major kind of note is a little bit of offensive line, and they've also changed Kirk Cousins for Case Keenum, who did much better than we kind of expected him to. I think when you look at this Vikings team, they have the ability to be great. I'd like to see more passes. We talk about balance. I'd like to see Kirk Cousins throw a little bit more than 10 times, but I guess if it's working, why not?
I mean, they won the game, and then they solidly had the game in the lead the whole entire time. And I'm with you, Dustin. I mean, they look really good, and when you're winning, you're obviously doing something right.
Right.
But I don't know if you can sit there and say they're well balanced. I mean,
well, Cousins did have 2 fumbles too, so maybe that scared him off a little bit. Where they're like, okay, he's got to get it under control.
I guess my point is even the best teams still sit about 60-40 in passes.
Right. You don't want to be 80-20 because then teams sell out.
Exactly, and that's the issue. And I know, hey, if you're winning, why show your playbook off? Hold off for a little bit and see what happens. I'm at to pump the brakes on the Vikings for you, man. I like that defense. I like the way it looked. I'm still a little bit out on that offense. I'm a huge fan of Dalvin Cook. I'm glad he did well. But I think more of the question marks are around Kirk Cousins, man. You got to see him air the ball out at some point in time because you are not going to get a lead like this every game, week in and week out.
And the Cardinals did close it out with a field goal in overtime. Awesome. So that game is over, I believe. No, I'm sorry. They kicked a field goal. They're up. It's not over yet. All right, moving forward here, Drew. The final thing I want to talk about with the Falcons game, we didn't see Devontae Freeman touch the ball as much as I thought we would. Only 8 carries for him. I know he had a lot of catches that kind of featured him in the passing game, but I was expecting more from a guy that should step forward and be the lead back here. I feel bad for everyone like me who drafted him in their fantasy league because at this point I don't know how much to trust him. This is a guy that should be getting Dalvin Cook-style touches where he's getting 20 carries and looked at in the passing game. Instead, we've seen him not really get focused on here from Atlanta. Strange move from a team that bet big on this guy by letting Tevin Coleman go.
Right, no doubt about it. All right, let's go into our next game. We got the Bills against the Jets.
Thank you for the update, Eric.
What a game that was, man. I mean, that was
for low scoring.
It
had some, yeah, absolutely. Again, another rookie, Singletary, their running back, 4 rushes, 70 yards, 5 receptions, 28 yards. These rookies are getting involved early and often in this, but I think the real story here is John Brown for the Bills. Week 1 with the new team, putting up 7 receptions and over 100 yards and a touchdown, especially that one in the clutch in the fourth quarter. John Brown, for a deep threat, is looking like he's found his home in Buffalo because it didn't start well for them. But he managed to catch that big play down at the end of the game that was enough to beat a team like the Jets. The other thing I want to emphasize, we were right. Don't bet on anyone in fantasy in this, right?
Right. Though, Le'Veon Bell looked good, and he was utilized well, and he got a touchdown. So if you were going to have to play one, obviously Le'Veon Bell was the person you were going to play. I do want to emphasize a little bit about the Jets and their lead and allowing the Bills to come back and win that game. This is what makes or breaks good teams, is when you have a lead and you hold on to that lead. And this is something the Jets are really going to have to look deep inside themselves. I don't know if anyone's sitting there saying, hey, the Jets have a possibility of making the playoffs. But I know they did starting week 1. All teams think that.
Right.
This is an issue that they're going to take care of. Adam Gase is going to have to sit there and really think about how he's going to do this play calling in the future, because sitting there stalling at, 16, 17? I can't remember.
16 points,
16 points stalling after you put those points up fairly quick. You got issues.
Yeah, and a lot, especially when one of them's a defensive scorer. I get it, Buffalo's a good defense, but you have to do better against a division rival. I'm with you. They need more weapons. We saw Jamison Crowder kind of take this over from them, having 14 receptions and 99 yards. Almost nobody else, aside from Le'Veon Bell, was utilized from the receiving core. It's just not good enough, right? I think the Jets are another year away from being a team that can actually do some damage because they need some playmakers.
I guess I could tell you,
And
I told you so.
Go ahead.
About Crowder.
Just
saying that he was their guy.
14 receptions, but he only had 100 yards. So,
Well,
great job.
PPR league.
Good job getting that big fat L. So until he goes out and gets him a win, Drew, I'm still saying Jamison Crowder. Look, I like him as a player. I don't think he's a bad player, but you don't sign Jamison Crowder and say the wide receiving core is fixed, especially when you're as far in the hole as the Jets are. Instead, they paid a guy like Quincy Enunwa, who had 1 catch and 3 yards. We've known they've needed weapons. Instead, they have not targeted them. I don't understand what the Jets are doing, but they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do for the next 15 weeks, 16 weeks, to figure out how to put any kind of presentable offense out there. The Bills are a good defense, so it probably won't be 16 points every week, but there's going to be a lot of defenses that find a way to frustrate this team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do want to get to Josh's comment. Josh, good to see you. He says he has been a long-time Dolphins fans. Sorry just now for joining you guys today, dude. Don't apologize. I'm glad you're here. He says, I can't believe that some of these players were reportedly asking for trades and could not see this coming. I mean, come on now. All the moves that were made right before the start of the season.
This is embarrassing. When you get beat like this, it's embarrassing, especially when a team keeps the foot on the throttle and they keep scoring on you. I mean, 42-10, wasn't it, at halftime? And the Ravens probably could have let up a little bit. Instead, they decided to keep scoring. I know they put RG3 in the game, and he went perfect. 7 for 7, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's still embarrassing to be a player on that team. You don't want that kind of tied around you, especially if the organization has a new coach. You don't know how the chemistry and the culture is going to be going forward. I don't blame everyone for wanting to jump ship. Then again, if you're the GM, I don't care, right? I care about what are we going to do to get wins in the future.
Right.
Trading guys away like Kenny Stills and Laramie Tunsil and getting a haul for picks will set this team up in the future. Some guys are going to have to ride this out. It's easier to say when you're the GM and you don't have to worry about only having a 7 or 8 or 9 year playing career and wasting time like this with a team that's this bad. But the Dolphins, if you're a player, some of them are just going to have to tough it out.
At some point in time, man, you're going to see the true players that you want in a Miami uniform, because they're going to sit there and start playing for their job. They're going to start playing for the future of this organization. Tough week 1, but I don't think your team's going 0-16. I don't feel like that is possible for a team like Miami. Even though they've traded a lot of their talent away, you still got some young talent there.
Right.
I mean, at some point in time, these guys will be like, hey, I'm playing for my next contract. I'm playing to stay in Miami. Some of this stuff will come out, and they're going to upset a game or two against some of these teams that try to overlook Miami. But unfortunately, the 2019 season is more than likely not the Dolphins season.
Right, absolutely. Also, Eric says, could any of these teams in the AFC East challenge the Patriots, even with the Antonio Brown acquisition?
Yeah.
I think you meant to say without. No. No, they can't challenge them. The Patriots are going to run away with this division again like they usually do. They're going to have a lot of wins. They're going to have home field advantage when it comes to the playoffs, or very close to it. And then, miraculously, they're going to get far. Look, that's part of the reasons the Patriots are as successful as they are. It's not just because they're a great team, because there are a lot of great teams that play in great divisions and get beat up and don't have year in and year out the same success. The fact of the matter is, these organizations have had a hard time putting presentable product on the field for a long time. And we have not seen that change. I mean, if without Ryan Fitzpatrick, if they do make the change to Josh Rosen, they will have 3 second-year quarterbacks trying to go up against a 17-year vet in Tom Brady.
Yeah.
The deck is stacked against each and every one of these teams.
When you said the comment, I just thought kind of just meant like, can they challenge them? I do think they can challenge them. I do believe
like in one game. Like you could have Miami steal a game.
Right, that's what I meant. Like that's what I thought we were saying. Like I believe the Bills' defense can challenge the Patriots. I believe when the Jets kind of get their crap together offensively, this team could challenge the Patriots. But that's the Patriots' division. It's going to be their division until.
Well, when Tom Brady retires, it's going to be open, right? Quote unquote.
Or Belichick.
Who knows?
Calls it.
They just let Hoyer go because they like Nate Stidham. Maybe they have the next Tom Brady waiting behind him in a 4th-round pick. We'll move forward. We'll talk about the Redskins and Eagles. Let's talk about this game because I was perplexed. Honestly, Drew, we picked the Redskins in the offseason, maybe kind of underestimating what they would have looked like. We didn't know the quarterback situation was going to be, quote-unquote, bad, but you look at Case Keenum going out there and throwing for, 380 yards? And all of a sudden, it doesn't look so bad.
I think he was also trying to quiet his naysayers, which I am one of them.
Well, I think he dunked on you today because if you would have told me Case Keenum with this receiving core was going to throw this many yards on a defense like the Eagles, I would have told you you're crazy. Even in week 1 when everyone's not ready for it, I would have told you you're out of your mind. Another rookie, Terry McLaurin, leading the charge, 5 receptions, 125 yards and a touchdown. It's rookie. This is the week of the rookie, Drew. And honestly, if Terry McLaurin can be the guy for Case Keenum, I almost think you can waste a year with Dwayne Haskins and leave him on the bench. Let Case Keenum roll this year if you can have this kind of performance.
Do the Lions tie it up?
Yeah, the Lions have tied it up.
27-27 right now?
We're 3 minutes and 48 seconds away from a tie in the Detroit game. Crazy. Interesting move.
As far as this Redskins and Eagles game goes, I think the Redskins played above their talent offensively. I think that is not going to be a week in and week out kind of scenario. I believe also that Guy Scott was definitely very underperformed, but against a very tough
defensive
Eagles front. Yes. Really, I think more of the questions kind of rely on the Eagles. It was a great comeback and win scenario, but you can't allow a team like the Redskins, especially in division, to hang around like that. I mean,
I give them credit.
I'm just saying is we all know the Redskins quarterback room is not very talented right now, or at least the talent hasn't flourished yet.
Well, Case Keenum doesn't know that. 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks.
We saw this in Minnesota with him too, and then he goes off to Denver and falls.
I think they take an NFC championship. Okay, but it's Denver, and Denver hasn't been able to find its rear end with both hands for years. On offense, you almost had me. You almost fired me up enough to where I said it. But when I look at this game and I look at what Case Keenum has done with this wide receiving core being in the way it is, I give the Redskins credit. I give Jay Gruden credit here because a lot of teams say, we have a game plan. We're the Redskins. We run the ball. Instead, they looked at it and said, you know what Philly does really well? They have a great defensive line. Maybe one of the best in football. We're going to throw. We're going to go challenge the secondary that has some questions. Guys like Avonte Maddox that can't match up quite as well with some of these other receivers. We're going to go pick on them. That's what they did when they only ran the ball as a team 13 times. They only got 28 yards out of it, so not great performance. But instead, they put it all on Case Keenum, and they said, look, Case, if we're going to beat the Eagles, you're going to have to do it through the air. I give them credit for trying to think outside the box. Too many teams, Chicago is my biggest example for this, say, we have an identity. This is what we do. We're sticking to it regardless. That doesn't pay off long term. I think you need to play to your opponent's weaknesses, and the Redskins did that today. That's why it stayed as close as it did for as long as it did.
Me and Dustin are on the same page. He said Eagles started really slow and looked bad, but the rust came off and they did their thing. Jackson had a great homecoming game, and with all that speed will help Wentz out a lot. I'm right there with you. That's where I'm sitting there saying I think the Eagles have more questions than the Redskins do, even though the Redskins played out of their minds, even though with a loss,
right?
They played above their talent mark. My point is the Eagles can't keep starting games out slow. Again, it's week 1, but the Eagles are quote unquote a Super Bowl favorite in a sense. A lot of people believe that they can make it, They need to start out a lot better than this.
It takes talent to come back, though. And they showed that this week. I want to see them kind of continue that into week 2, but as far as week 1 goes, they powered through a tough divisional opponent like the Redskins, who still have a good defense, still run the ball pretty well. Apparently now they can throw with Case Keenum. I think the Eagles did well to win this game, and I think Deshaun Jackson was that add that they needed. Props, like I said, getting out of your comfort zone can be a good thing. Carson Wentz loves his tight ends. Instead, today he focused on Deshaun Jackson and let him. It'd be hard to focus on Deshaun Watson. He focused on Deshaun Jackson and got him 8 receptions for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. So,
yeah,
I think he did a good job of focusing more on the receivers, especially new receivers like Jackson early on or later on in this game.
Eddie seems like a man that knows what he's talking about. I don't know why I feel that way about him, but he said Eagles are my pick to play in the Super Bowl against his Chiefs. Rough first half, but then they're going to get better. I'm right there with you, man.
Dustin's kind of firing back, saying Dallas will win the NFC East. I think if Dak throws for 480 yards every week, they will. Great performance out of the Cowboys. Again, we wanted to see this team come out, but I think Dak was looking to get paid, and I think they were looking for a reason to pay him. I think this was a confluence of them and playing the Giants that all came together, and it was just the perfect storm for the Dallas fans out there. Dak was trying to prove a point. The Cowboys were trying to prove a point. And the Giants' defense wasn't good enough to stop them from proving that point on them. Not to mention they were putting DeAndre Baker up against rookie cornerback, not the week of the rookie for him, up against Amari Cooper in a lot of one-on-one coverage, and surprised he was getting burned. Like, what a way to start when they're like, all right, kid, Georgia was fun and all, but now you have to go out and cover Amari Cooper one-on-one by yourself. Good luck. That's tough. That's a tough way to start with a rookie. Again, props to the Cowboys. I think we picked the Eagles to beat them, but I think we picked them to get in as a wild card right behind them. We think it's going to be neck and neck, and it's a 2-horse race in the NFC East.
Yeah, no doubt.
In our opinion.
Eric's already saying that the Cowboys will be in the Super Bowl for the NFC. The NFC.
We got a long way to go. We got a lot of quarterbacks who are going to get hurt.
Let's not forget about the Saints, man.
Let's not forget about the Saints or the Rams, who look bad. Let's talk about their game next.
Let's do it.
Rams 30-27 over the Panthers. Drew, we were ready to write this Panthers team off, man. I think this is, again, a great performance. Even though Cam Newton didn't really light the scoreboard up, there's one guy who did. His name's Christian McCaffrey. Listen to these stats, man. 19 rushes, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 receptions, 80 yards. We know McCaffrey can do it, but how long can this guy have this kind of workload and be the only weapon out there in Carolina and keep them in games? This is great week 1. Week 12, I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in.
Yeah, no, it's they're going to run him into the ground. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The guy is definitely he's very in shape. He's built like a monster for quote unquote how small he is compared to some other running backs. But no, you can't keep running this guy in the ground. But beyond that, I mean, this is what you sign up for. This is what you make millions for.
Well, he's cool with it. He's like put it on me. But if you're the GM, you got to be sitting there saying, running backs have like a 6-year shelf life, and I'm giving him like 2 running backs worth of workload every year. Does that mean he's only going to last me about 3 before he gets hurt?
I just wish I would have picked him in my fantasy leagues.
Absolutely. Jeremy, absolutely. What a day. Wild day in the NFL, man. It was fun. I know as a Titans fan, I had a lot of fun. But again, even if your team didn't win, I'm sure you're glad that they're back at least.
Yeah.
Also, Zeka says the Cowboys look good because the Giants are a dumpster fire. Yes, but you just like the Ravens, you can only beat that dumpster fire who's in front of you. A lot of teams let these guys hang around. Props to the Cowboys for coming out firing, I'd say.
Eric says he would have figured the Rams' defense would have been a lot stronger against the Panthers. Did not expect the Panthers to score.
Should have been a lot stronger against Christian McCaffrey. I think DJ Moore was like the next threat out there with like 7 catches and like 80-some yards.
I think it just shows how well Cam Newton can play because they built this team around Cam Newton. I mean, he didn't go out and just tear it up, but you know what? You'd have saw
240 yards passing, 2 turnovers, no touchdowns.
You would have saw that rookie out there. I can't think of his name right now.
Will Greer
out there. You probably
I don't know, Drew. It's the week of the rookie. You're right. You're probably. I mean, I guarantee you, he probably would have done better than the Rams.
I'm not saying Cam was perfect because Cam's still banged up. I don't care what they say. His shoulder's still hurt. His ankle's still sore. I mean, this is a banged up Cam Newton out there.
And this is like a running topic with the Panthers, where they're like, doesn't matter, shelf life. What is that? Put him out there, get him beat up. Who cares? I think the Rams did a good job of surviving this game. I would like to see more out of Todd Gurley, but apparently he's not 100% fresh. Only 14 carries. That worries me a little bit, especially for a guy that was all Mr. Volume, but I think the Rams have learned their lesson, and the Panthers haven't learned that lesson yet, which is, even if I have a great player, I don't want him to touch the ball literally every play, because eventually, all these hits accumulate in the NFL.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between the Rams and the Panthers right now. I mean, let's be honest.
Sure.
The Rams could find themselves in the Super Bowl again.
They didn't have a 100-yard receiver. Jared Goff looked like garbage. I mean, 23 of 39, 186 yards, Drew. Touchdown and pick. Goff didn't look good either.
I know he didn't.
Was it Panthers or was it rust on the Rams? It could be a little bit of both, I'd say. Jonathan saying, go Eagles. We did just talk about him, but yes, what a comeback, man. It didn't start well. You don't like to see Case Keenum throw all over your team like that, but good job sticking with him. Good job finding a way to get a win in a bad situation. That's what separates the great teams from the good ones in the NFL.
Well, let's get into the Chiefs and Jaguars. We'll go into a question by Jeremy. His Nick Foles injury. What does this mean for the Jags going forward this year?
I know a lot of people are going to say Gardner Minshew went 22 of 25 against the Chiefs for, what was it, Drew? How many yards? I got it right here. 300. Too many? No, it was actually, sorry, I got the wrong one. 275 yards in that completion percentage. It's a great showing from a team that loves to let bad teams sneak up on them. And this isn't necessarily a dig on the Chiefs, but they love letting teams back into it. I think the Chiefs kind of relaxed a little bit when Nick Foles went out and said, we've got it, as the Chiefs are wont to do. The offense didn't relax, though, and I think that's a good thing for the Chiefs. What does that mean for the Jaguars going forward? Ask me after week 2, because, again, this is a defense that really likes to let teams score points once they get a healthy lead. So Gardner Minshew looked great against the Chiefs. That doesn't mean much to me, unfortunately. When I see that, I'm like, okay, but so did Oakland last year. So did Denver last year. We've seen a lot of teams creep back up on these Chiefs teams. Show me against a team that has to play them for 4 quarters, and then I'll tell you what Gardner Minshew is going to look like.
Right, and I'm with Eddie. The Chiefs' defense made Minshew look like an all-pro. Let's be completely honest here, guys. We all know what the weakness is on the Chiefs, and that's their defense. Until it's fixed, that is always going to be the issue. But I'm with you, Jake.
Now that we got that part of the show out of the way, let's talk about everything the Chiefs do great.
But I'm with you, though. One thing that the Chiefs do, and they seem to do it year in, year out, it must be an Andy Reid syndrome, is when we get a lead, we kind of let off the gas. And fortunately for us, the Jags don't have an offense that can come back and score a lot of points on us. But I'm right there with Eddie. I mean, he looked really good. And as far as Jags fans go, that should be exciting.
Detroit's about to tie, by the way. There's about a minute left. They just got a punt all the way back inside their 20.
Oh, you mean they're about to win?
No, they're about to tie. They have it in their 20. They just got a punt. Yeah,
So, just my point across that and how Minshew played is this is a great stepping stone for a young quarterback to play and do well. And literally, you could throw that last interception out. That was just him trying to make something happen last minute. I mean, the guy played an outstanding game, and against an NFL defense, regardless of where they're ranked, this is a good start for the Jags. It sucks that Nick Foles doesn't get to be out there, but hey, after week 8, week 9, you're going to get your quarterback back, and you might have a quarterback.
Depends how bad the break is. Sometimes it could be a season long. Sometimes it could be 6 to 10 weeks. You get back after a collarbone break. It really just depends.
It's usually
I
about
think they're
8
gonna have to do
weeks.
it.
It's usually about 8 weeks,
unless you're Tony Romo.
But that's
unless you're Aaron Rodgers. It can happen. You can miss a season on it.
It's 8 weeks to heal, and then you gotta sit there and rehab your shoulder back.
I'm telling you, a lot of guys break it bad enough, like Aaron Rodgers and Tony Romo. It can take you out for a season. I will say this though: yes, there's a chance they get Nick Foles back. The question is, does the defense and the rest of this team stay focused? We saw that happen with Blake Bortles last year, where they quit. Now let me talk about the Chiefs real quick.
Hold on,
Go
real
ahead.
quick. Jonathan, you're right. He did play for Washington State, and he did great there. I'm just saying, it's a good thing for Jags fans. You seem like you got a pretty decent backup. Go ahead.
Also, Jeremy wants to know, was the Jags defense that bad, or was the Chiefs offense that good? Let me segue into it with this. Yes, Jeremy, it was all Chiefs here. I don't think the Jaguars defense is that bad. I know you're a Colts fan. I'm a Titans fan. We're hoping that's the way we can point the blame. I think this is all Chiefs, and I'll give them credit because for a long time I've said Tyreek Hill is the engine of this offense, and his explosiveness spreads things out for defenses. I want to see it for the next weeks going forward, but even when they lost him, they didn't slow down.
Now, because Sammy Watkins stepped up.
Well, yeah, and this might be one of 2 good games Sammy Watkins is going to have all year. But what a game, right? What a game.
What's up with that negativity? Did I say that?
What negativity? That's not negativity. That's fact. We've seen him do it like 6 of his 7 seasons in the NFL.
16 games this year.
Well, yeah, but not good is the problem. I mean, he's going to have like 14 games where he catches like 30 yards, and he's going to have 2 games where he has like 250, and they're like, Sammy Watkins almost had 1,000 yards receiving. I think he's a great receiver. Let's go pay him $65 million. We've seen this before with Sammy Watkins. He's had that great year in Buffalo. Since then, he has not had consistency. I want to see what the Chiefs look like going forward. But in this game, they did a good job of finding a way to keep Sammy involved in the game and keep passing when their engine, and the guy I believe in, had to go out with an injury. The reports are right now it's going to be a couple weeks on Tyreek Hill before he's back.
2 weeks.
I want to see what the Chiefs look like, but if they stay just as scary...
Or it could be all year long, Mr. Dr. Jake.
It could be, but he didn't break his collarbone. There's a difference.
No, he separated his collarbone from his sternum. That sounds
Which
pretty
apparently
terrible.
not as bad as breaking your collarbone, especially when you throw for a living. But how'd you know I had an MD? Moving forward here, the Chiefs, if they can stay as dangerous as they are right now, I'm all in on Patrick Mahomes. This is the prove it kind of moment I wanted to see, because I think Tyreek Hill for a long time has been the guy that's driven this offense. I think they might take somewhat of a step back on offense, but it's hard not to when you lose your first receiver, right? Yeah. You can't point fingers and say they're bad because of it. I want to see week 2 and week 3 what the Chiefs look like, because if they don't miss a beat, buy in Mahomes buy the hype on Mahomes at that point.
And I'm completely on the opposite in that. I like what Tyreek does, and he's definitely an important piece of the Chiefs offense, but this offense goes through Kelsey. And I know that Kelsey didn't have an outstanding game, but this is, he's still a good game.
3 for 88. That's
he's still
pretty
a good game, but
I'll take that out of my tight end.
He is the glue that keeps everything together. It's just like that playoff run until we faced the Titans and they took out Kelsey. Our offense fell on its face. This is just what happens. As far as Hill goes, it's a loss, but luckily that's the reason why I went out and drafted Harden. That's why I went out and signed big money for Watkins. That's the reason why we believe in Robinson there, is because we believe these guys can step up into that role. Are they as good as Hill is? No. But as long as Kelsey's there, I think this offense will be perfectly fine. Of course, Patrick Mahomes.
Also, Scott says, good call on Eckler. Jake, I had to read that because he was praising me. Thank you, Scott. I won't lie. I was worried when I told you not to start Derrick Henry. I was worried when I told you not to start Derrick Henry because he had that big day. Eckler obviously had a big one himself. Then again, you take out that one almost flubbed screen pass that Mariota threw behind him somehow at his knees on a screen pass. I think I could make that pass. That he broke for 75 yards. I think we're talking about a different Derrick Henry day. If that pass would have went incomplete, we're talking about Derrick Henry not quite lighting it up the way he did. Derrick Henry's going to be boom or bust. Austin Eckler, I think, is almost an every week starter until something changes in that running back room for the Chargers, like Melvin Gordon coming back. A couple more. Chris says, how about them Skins? They played absolutely great, man. We're glad.
See, Mike, I'm glad you could join us, man. I'm glad it's you at 3 a.m. and not me.
Absolutely. Hopefully your Bengals keep it going. We are going to be on repeat, Mike, if you want to see it. So, again, we're going to talk about the rest of these games, hopefully before Monday Night Football starts. So we got to grind, Drew. Are you ready to keep moving?
Yeah, let's move.
All right, our next game, Colts versus Chargers. Oh, well, it got a lot closer than I thought.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. I'm going to have to sit there and kind of say that I'm behind Brissett. I get that Andrew Luck is gone. I get he was the stud in the room, but 21 of 27, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is what you want out of your number 2 quarterback starting for a team that just lost their first quarterback. This is huge. Of course, Marlon Mack had a huge day where he ran for 174 yards and a touchdown. That is going to have to be the key for the Colts going into the future of this league into this year, is feed Marlon Mack often, a lot, and hopefully with that offensive line he'll keep putting up 100+ yards. This team looked pretty good. Unfortunately, in overtime, it didn't matter.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I believe this is just as much a Chargers playing down to competition. Like I always complain about them, they always find a way to get these teams that they should be beating comfortably to let them into games. I think this is more Chargers being fool's gold than Colts being a great team. I'm sorry, Colts fans. This isn't biased. I think 190 yards out of your starting quarterback might be a little bit worrisome, but at the very least, you just hung with them, and that's all that matters, right? It doesn't have to be pretty. You hung with a good team in the NFL. Maybe they can build on this, and maybe we see them take that step forward. I'm not a believer yet, but I'll say this. Marlon Mack looks like the stud that we believed he could have been. I was the one who was telling you, watch out, we don't know what he's going to look like with Jacoby Brissett.
Right.
I feel better about him week 2 because I think you're right. I think they're going to involve him very, very heavily in this offense, especially the way that offensive line's been blocking.
Yeah, as far as the Chargers go, they look good. They definitely look good. Eckler, actually had a huge game, especially through the air on the ground. He's a little bit light with that 58 yards and a touchdown.
We have a tie.
The good
Thanks,
tie.
Detroit.
But I think the one thing that these Chargers need to really focus on is that run game. Whoever it is that's going to run the ball, they need to get the ball on the ground and run the rock.
Right.
We've already know that Phillip Rivers can air it out. He did 25 out of 34, 333 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But that's what the Chargers have been doing for the last 5-6 years. Ever since LaDainian, went away, I mean, seriously, they've kind of been struggling in the sense of balancing out their offense. I think they need to figure out their run game. As good as they looked, I still think there's a lot of question marks.
I do too. Good win for the Chargers to at least pull it out, but you don't need to be letting teams like the Colts take you to overtime. You're supposed to be the Super Bowl contender, and they lost their starting quarterback. They're taking you to overtime. This is why I'm telling you week in and week out, the Chargers are not a legitimate threat. They're a team that doesn't know how to put people away. Even though they've got great players in that team, they don't have the killer instinct I want to see out of a team that's going to win the Super Bowl. And that's not just Phillip Rivers. That's not just the defense. It's not just the receiver. It's the whole squad. It's organizationally, the Chargers don't have whatever you want to call it, that killer instinct that's going to get them to a Super Bowl, in my opinion. Let's talk about Bengals Seahawks, a game that stayed way, way closer than, again, just like the Colts game. This one stayed so much closer than we thought it would be.
Yeah, but one thing we've always talked about during this offseason, when Andy Dalton was healthy and playing, this team did keep around other teams. I mean, he played really well. He went 35, 51 yards, 418 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you got to remember, this was without A.J. Green either.
Right.
This was just Ross and Tyler Boyd and his tight ends. I mean, he looked good. But that running game was just completely god-awful.
Absolutely. Again, it's what you kind of expect. We know the offensive line's going to be bad when your first overall pick is out for the season. You know that you're not going to be a powerhouse of an offensive line. I think the Bengals have had that problem for years. They've tried to fix it, drafting guys like Billy Price who haven't really worked out. Now they've drafted the Alabama tackle, whose name I can't think of right now, to try to fix that as well, and now he's missing the rest of the season. This is a tough setup. It really is. I think the Bengals, when you look at the way they're set up, they're going to have to just outshoot teams. You're not going to get a lot of support from your running game early on from teams that can play any kind of defense, and we know the Seahawks can defend up front. So the Bengals, if they're going to continue to have success, they're going to have to find a way to get Mixon involved in games where they can, and they're going to have to pass over the games they can't.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, Russell Wilson had a great game. He just didn't have the static numbers that you'd like to see. He went 14 for 20, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns. He obviously found Chris Carson in the end zone, and my boy Tyler Lockett as well for 1 reception and 88 yards. I think kind of the story here is DK Metcalf, 4 receptions, 89 yards, another rookie.
Maybe the Bengals could have run a little bit better if they would have had their rookie tackle.
He kind of looked like the number 2 option or even the number 1 option in that passing game because only throwing the ball 20 times, he caught 4 of those receptions out of 14. I mean, that kind of puts him up there as one of the best receivers in this game for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I think the Seahawks, again, I will always say they don't play the right kind of offensive style where you're going to see the Seahawks throw the ball all over the place and put up a lot of points, even though they can. That's not what they do. This still looked like a great team. Unfortunately, they let the Bengals hang around a little too much, but they still got to win.
Absolutely. Eric's saying it's an impressive win for the Chargers, even without Melvin Gordon. The Colts aren't pushovers. I'm not saying the Colts are a pushover, but the defense is still not stud. They're not one of the best units in football. They're somewhere around average, or at least they were last year. So unless we see Justin Houston take them over the top, this team probably isn't going to be much better defensively. You're supposed to be an offense that can keep up with the Chiefs and the Patriots and the Steelers and the AFC. You got to show me something more than that. They should have put this game away early and often, and they should have been able to bury him. Sean, good to see you, man. We're glad you're in here as well.
Eric says he thinks that the Bengals exposed the Seahawks. I just want to get it back into the point what I was getting at. This Seahawks team normally is not a team that puts up 35 points to a team that has like 10 points.
And Mark's ready to talk Raiders. We're going to talk about the Raiders here in just a sec, too.
It's just my point is you'll see the Seahawks win ugly games, and then you'll see them in the playoffs and do a deep run in the playoffs. That's just what the Seahawks do.
Absolutely.
Lions and Cardinals.
Cardinals. Disgusting tie, 27-27. Another week 1 tie, Drew. Does this come down to these teams not being ready to play and not being ready to finish the deal because of the preseason? Or is this just a much improved Cardinals team going up against a team like the Lions that are trying to figure it out themselves?
I think it's a mixture of both. If you watch the game at all, I know I had to stop watching it, but Kyler Murray started off really sluggish, really ugly looking start, not really impressive at all, and the Lions had a pretty good decent start, but obviously as I walked away from the game, the Cardinals started picking up a little bit. They started getting their rhythm. I mean, this is exactly what it is. You need to play your rookies. You need to play your starters during the preseason. Hope and pray that they don't get hurt because you need them ready by week 1.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on and talk about the Giants and the Cowboys if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about how the Giants played very little defense, kind of like we expected. And we're halfway decent on offense, kind of like we expected. It's almost like we know what we're talking about, Drew. Almost. I'll say this. Eli Manning playing looked better than I expected Eli Manning to look, but I wasn't blown away. I wasn't like, whoa, Eli Manning's back. Here comes another Super Bowl for the Giants.
But he didn't do anything to lose his job either.
Yeah, but did you like them putting Daniel Jones in there at the end, or should they just let it go?
I think the game was over.
Yeah, exactly.
And you already know that Eli Manning's a foot out the doorway and Daniel Jones is a foot onto the field. I mean, it's just a matter of time before they do the switch. But as far as Eli goes, 30 for 44, 306 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's pretty decent, saying all the question marks that are around this team. And, of course, Barkley, he had, 11 rushes for 120 yards. This guy is a stud. Yep. He's going to be a stud, it seems like, for a long time in this league.
Yeah, hopefully the Giants get it together long enough where he can actually have a career that matters. As for a couple more of these comments here, Sean, the Buffalo Bills made a great comeback today. You should be very, very happy with the way this team looked because down, 16-0 or whatever they were at with the Jets, they should not have been back in that game the way the Jets play defense. You got a guy like John Brown who stepped up. That's big for the Bills. Corey says he just wants to give a shout-out and say the Chargers did great without Melvin Gordon, but the Colts players played a great game. I'm with you. The Colts played well. I wanted to see more out of them. I did. Chargers, that is, not the Colts. I think the Colts played maybe even above their heads. If you're going to compete with the Chiefs and you're going to compete in this AFC West to try to get this first or second seed it's going to take to win a Super Bowl out of the AFC, I got to see more than that. I know it's still week 1. Hopefully they improve, but I'm a little let down with the Chargers. I've been the guy that's been saying the Chargers need to just crush the teams that aren't quite to the same level as they are. I still think the Colts aren't quite there.
Dustin, I get it, man. I agree, guys. Everyone, Zeke Elliott had limited touches, but we got to remember he hadn't been there with the organization at all. So if you think about it, they were planning without him anyways. So we can all say, they're playing so Prescott can earn that contract. I think this was their game plan to begin with. I really do.
It sure looked like it.
Because,
like they threw early and often.
And they did a really good job.
It might be the work, too. They might have also said, hey, Zeke hasn't been working with us. We don't want to overstress him in the first game where he's coming back. I'm agreeing. That might have been part of the game plan. This time, yeah. We agree all the time. It's just usually you agreeing with me. I say something and you agree.
Skipped a beat.
No, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely right on that. Also, Eric says, how about the diversity of Dak's TD passes among his receivers? I like to see Michael Gallup as involved as he was. I like to see Randall Cobb looking like Randall Cobb from 2015 again. Yeah, and Amari Cooper just like a stud.
Witten, and I'm blanking out on the fourth guy.
Barwin, the tight end? It's not Barwin. What is it? Help me out here.
I'm blanking out, too. I'm literally blanking out the name.
But yes, oh, God. I'm blanking, too.
That is exactly what you want to see in your quarterback, Eric, is the ball being spread around, not to go.
Jarwin, sorry, I knew it was close to Barwin. I was like, it's not Connor Barwin, he's a D end.
Not to go back to the Chiefs, but I think by the half, Mahomes already thrown to like 10 or 11 of his players. That is a good sign of a quarterback trying to add everyone in, and usually a good sign of a great quarterback as well.
Absolutely. I love to see the distribution. We've been complaining that Dak hasn't had enough weapons, even though we haven't liked the way he's played. We've been saying the Cowboys need more weapons. Michael Gallup looks legit. Yeah. I know it's the Giants, but he looks like he's a great receiver. Some of those catches he's making look great. I like to see Jarwin involved. I like to see Randall Cobb involved. And I like Amari Cooper still leading the way where you've still got the stud wide receiver. Even though they tried to focus and take him away, we saw him also put a rookie in single coverage against him at times. They confused the Giants into not covering their best receiver on some plays. I love to see that out of the Cowboys. This Kellen Moore offense looks 100% more dynamic than what we've seen out of the Cowboys in years past.
And I'm telling you right now, I'm ready to see the Cowboys play legitimate defense, because if they could pull this offensive show that they put up against the Giants against a formidable defense, I'm going to be with you guys. You're going to see the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. But until that happens, I don't know.
Corey's saying the Chargers are really going to miss Derwin James. Yes, I don't think Marlon Mack puts up the kind of day he did with Derwin James in the field. I think you probably limit that by 20, 30, 40 yards with a guy like Derwin James out there. So, yeah, they're going to miss him.
Hey, Sean, sorry, we are going to stick fully to football. We'll have to save all your
we are going to talk baseball for Tuesday.
For Tuesday, yeah. You're going to have to save those questions for Tuesday, man.
Absolutely. Let's move forward, Drew. Let's talk about our next game. Cowboys look good. Giants look kind of like what we expected them to. Not the worst in the world, but it's going to take some work to beat some teams. Let's talk about this Cardinals-Detroit game. Because, again, this is the one that we have not quite prepped for because it's been going on almost to a couple minutes ago.
We're talking about it again?
Yeah, well, they tied. Did we talk about it?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Well, we're out of order then. Awesome. Arizona looks better than I thought. Detroit looks about what I thought. All right, ties week 1 suck.
We talked about it, but we can talk about it more if you'd like to.
Well, we got the cans out of order. You're messing me up. I don't have all this in front of me.
Let's talk about it, man. What do you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about Matt Stafford needing to do better against a bad defense. I want to talk about, especially with no corners. I want to talk about Detroit needing to get a little bit back towards the pass. I want to talk about Arizona looking a little bit better. I get it. You didn't see the best and most explosive start in the week of the rookie from first overall pick, Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
I would like to see more out of Kyler Murray, but again, it's week 1. He's a quarterback. It's a little bit different than these receivers who just have to go out there and catch the ball, right?
Right.
So much easier on them. Now, the Cardinals, it's something to grow on. This isn't a game you tie last year. I like the way they rushed the passer. I like the way they kind of stepped up to the occasion and made something happen. I like Larry Fitzgerald being that involved. And we'll move forward. That's it.
Well, I got to say TJ Hawkinson because someone said don't put your money on a young rookie tight end. And I said, I don't know, this guy might be different. I was kind of right.
It could be.
At least week 1.
Yeah, at least week 1, right?
That's all that matters.
He had a great start. That's all anyone will
throw the rest of the season out.
Let's talk Tampa and the 49ers. Round out our last game, and then we'll pick these primetime games that have started, but to be fair, we haven't watched. So we appreciate you guys sticking with us. We're going to talk about these primetime games in a second. Finally, Tampa Bay and the 49ers.
See you, Dustin. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely, man. Tampa Bay and the 49ers, was that not like one of the worst, grossest games I've seen so far? I just couldn't. It just didn't feel right. Watching the rest of that game, I was like, what is happening here? We should be scoring so many more points than this.
I'm losing faith in Garoppolo, and you know I was a Jimmy G guy.
Yeah.
You know I was. I was big about him. I thought he was going to be a great pro, especially in Kyle Shanahan's system. It was disappointing. I get he didn't have a terrible game, but this Buccaneers defense is atrocious. He should have been.
This should have been the feather in your cap game. Where you're like, I threw 422 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah,
I'm back. And as far as the other quarterback goes, Jameis Winston, he's exactly what I said he is. 3 interceptions. Was it 2 fumbles?
1 touchdown. He had fumbles on top of it. 194 yards, which is different. We're used to see him putting a lot of yards next to it. Everyone's been telling me Bruce Arians is going to solve this problem for Tampa Bay. I've been the guy saying I don't believe it yet. I know it's week 1, but again, just like I said about Tampa Bay, should have been the feather in Jimmy Garoppolo's cap. The 49ers can almost be your feather in the cap if you're going to throw a lot for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You should have lit this team up with Mike Evans. Even if Richard Sherman's on him, you've got Godwin and those tight ends as well. There should have been 400 yards on the board in this game. I should have seen offensive explosions left and right. Instead, both these teams kind of got outplayed by defenses that should not be outplaying people.
Right, and not only did he throw 3 picks, he threw 2 interceptions for touchdowns, too.
And maybe I can forgive Winston, right? Maybe I can forgive Winston because the 49ers have spent so much in that defensive front. They have a guy like Richard Sherman back there. They have a couple players in this defense that should be able to step up and make an impact. But we just have not seen anything from this Tampa Bay defense at all. And Jimmy G struggled again.
Yeah, no, it's an issue.
I'm buying the whole preseason might not have been a fluke thing.
No, there's an issue with Jimmy G and that offense. There's no doubt about it because you got to think about what his backups were doing last year when he went down with an injury. They were putting up points.
Absolutely. And I'm kind of with Eric. Both of them are looking like dumpster juice this year. They absolutely could be. We need to see more out of him. I think Kyle Shanahan will probably get things back on track faster than Bruce Arians will out there in Tampa Bay. I just don't see Tampa with that defense matching up well, but who knows? This is a good defensive week. Maybe it's something you build on.
Yeah. Let's do our picks, man.
Let's do our picks. Our first game, Steelers and Patriots. Drew, I didn't even ask you before the show. I didn't even care what you what you thought about this game.
You do care.
But now I do.
You always care.
Who are you taking in this matchup of behemoths? I mean, this could be a battle for the AFC I don't want to say championship, but this could be a huge setup for the AFC.
Yeah, no,
It's not the AFC championship anymore.
Man,
Maybe.
to be honest with you, I got to go Steelers. Even though I think the Patriots at the end of the season will have a better record than the Steelers, I think it's just always what happens with the Patriots in week one. They seem to always never be full firing on all cylinders. I think the Steelers have something to prove. The Patriots obviously don't. The Patriots are also waiting for their new weapon, Antonio Brown.
How great would it have been to see him play in this game?
Yeah, right. Which will be something we get into on Tuesday. We don't have time for it today. I'm going to take the Steelers.
You're going to take the Steelers. All right. Well, I just pulled up the score. It's still 0-0. I didn't even mean to. Normally, I try not to look at it, but I couldn't help myself. I'm going to go Patriots. And the reason I'm going to say that is because the Patriots are at home, and they just have the Steelers number for whatever reason. I think Tom Brady, or not Tom Brady, I think Bill Belichick has free real estate up in Mike Tomlin's head. I do. I think he lives up there, and every time the Steelers go to New England, they just seem to struggle. I'm sorry, Steelers fans, I did.
There's
did.
microphones in the bathroom.
I know. Well, yeah, exactly. That was the story from last year, that Tomlin doesn't hold meetings in the locker room because he thinks they're all bugged. They talked in a bathroom in there. When I look at this game, man, I think the Steelers are going to be good. I think this is going to be a close game, especially without Antonio Brown, but I think the Patriots are going to have too much for a team that is still missing some weapons from last year.
All right, let's go to the first Monday night game. We got the Texans at the New Orleans Saints.
It's got to be Saints.
Who do you got?
It's got to be Saints. Fresh Drew Brees going up against a secondary that's this thin on paper. The Texans should have a very, very difficult time in this. Maybe Alvin Kamara doesn't have the game we want him to have out of New Orleans, but this should be Michael Thomas every day of the week. He should be lighting this up. Maybe Jared Cook makes an appearance too.
Actually, this game's going to be a little bit closer, but I still have the Saints winning it. I think that the Texans are on the right path to becoming a good team. Unfortunately for them, injuries have kind of hit them already.
Well, they won the division last year, Drew. I think they're already a good team, right? They're already there. Give them a little bit of credit. They're not quite Super Bowl, but they're a good team.
How many playoffs have they won?
Like they play the Patriots all the time, so like 0.
Okay, there you go. So I don't know, man. I guess they're on the cusp of being a good team, and they could be a great team. Is that better for you? Is my English better?
Well, Eric's
for you?
with you. He says the Saints always start very slowly, so maybe this is a team.
I'm picking the Saints.
Maybe this is a team.
All that being said,
that can upset people. I'm going to go Saints as well. I think you have to go with them here. I think when you look at the way the Texans have had all this chaos in the offseason, they still haven't quite figured it out on the offensive line. They got a lot of what-ifs. I got to go Saints until I see different. I think this offensive line is going to get run over by a Saints defense that's better than people want to give him credit for. Yeah. I also think Deshaun Watson, as good as he's going to be, we're going to see him light things up. They're going to have an answer for DeAndre Hopkins where you can't just throw him the ball 14 times and expect to win the game that way. I just don't think the Texans have it. I think that running, they're going to be too soft. Passing, they're going to be trying to fit these other weapons in there. I got to go Saints here. I think it's going to get I'm not going to say super ugly, but I think the Saints win this one comfortably.
All right, we'll go to the next game. We got the Broncos going into Oakland against the Raiders. Who do you got?
I got to go Broncos, right? Speaking of drama, speaking of they have a lot of stuff going on and they're not sure about everything, the Raiders, they have so many new players. Antonio Brown has been distracting everyone for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now there's people talking about this collusion from the Patriots, getting him to pitch enough of, I'm not going to say that, to pitch enough of complaints to go out and get himself cut from his team so he can go sign with whoever he wants. When you look at this game, the Raiders have been the most distracted team in football. Not to mention they have HBO's Hard Knocks there as well. I got to go Broncos week one. Bet on Smash Mouth. Bet on Vic Fangio putting together enough of a defense to slow down this offense that we still think might be okay. I do anyway. I don't know about you.
If everything would have gone exactly like the Raiders wanted, AB in uniform, no drama, I would have picked the Raiders in this game. I honestly would have. I think that you're 100% right that all the distractions from Hard Knocks to AB, it's too much for any team to really sit there and focus on something that's, the game in front of them. I go the Broncos.
I do too. I think the Raiders will score a little bit. Hopefully Tyrell Williams puts up 38 fantasy points because I'm going to need him to bail me out in a couple fantasy leagues. Thanks, Larry Fitzgerald, and your overtime catches. But I think when you look at the way this game is going, I think the Raiders probably won't have the defense to match up for 4 quarters against a power running game, kind of like the Broncos are trying to set up. I think Mike Munchak in there on the offensive line will make things look a little bit better. I think the Broncos win this one comfortably. I don't think the Raiders have the firepower it's going to take to keep up with a defense that can rush the passer. Short of Josh Jacobs blowing this up and having a huge day running, especially between the tackles, they're not beating a team like the Broncos.
The only thing I can say is expect Derek Carr to throw the ball about 40 to 50 times.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're going to have to keep up. So, a couple more comments before we get out of here. Eric says the Raiders seem like an episode of Love and Hip Hop or Real Housewives. I'm right there with you. I'm sorry, of Love and Hip Hop. My bad. And I got to agree with you, man. HBO was like the worst thing that could have happened to this team, especially with a guy like Antonio Brown in the building. I don't know if it was collusion. I don't know if he was trying to do it on purpose, but things seem to have worked out for Antonio Brown and seemed to have really cost the Raiders, to have given up a 3rd and a 5th round pick to give the Patriots a new receiving option. It's kind of annoying. I'd be annoyed if I was Mike Mayock right now.
I'm going to leave all those comments to Tuesday.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We will be back on Tuesday to talk about all these primetime games. You've got some special thanks here. Drew doesn't want to let me forget. Final thoughts for this week.
It's week 1, guys. If your team lost, don't get down the dumps. Anything can change.
And I'm saying panic.
And I'm just saying, remember what happened to the Buccaneers and the Bears, 2 teams that definitely lost and won games, and then their season ended completely in different directions.
Mark's all in on the Raiders. He hopes they're going to win this one. Look, it's going to take a special offensive performance. Someone has to step up in lieu of Antonio Brown. We need, whether it's Tyrell Williams, whether it's Josh Jacobs, whether it's someone else on this offense, someone needs to step up to fill the void and say, look, we are still a good offense, and it can all run through me. I don't see that guy, though. Not yet. I know they paid Tyrell Williams that kind of money. I don't see that guy yet. I think the Raiders, need a hero if they're going to win against the Broncos here.
That must be your final thought.
That is my final thought. Let's do special thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you again for all the likes, comments, and shares. It means the world to us. I want to give special thanks out there.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Eric, we're glad to have you, man. Our show times right now during the season, we do Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays during the NFL season, all 6:45 Central, 7:45 Eastern. We hope to catch you there, man. It'll be fun. Eddie, good to see you, too.
You love interrupting me,
I do.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Do you go home and fantasize about it?
No.
You sure?
I don't. But go ahead. Special thanks.
All right.
Let me interrupt you real quick, actually. See you, Jeremy.
All right, guys. Thank you, Nathan, Ivy, Nate, Dustin, Justin, Zeka, Mike, Chris, Eric, Josh, Eddie, Jeremy, Jonathan, Scott, Chris, Sean, Mark, Corey. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for all the likes, comments, and shares.
Viewers like you. So, guys, thank you. It was a fun show. We love that football's back, man. So much fun. We can't wait to go watch the Steelers game. We'll catch you next time. I don't want to delay any longer. So, for Sports Around the Bar, we will see you guys on Tuesday.
See ya.